Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Lincoln Way District 210 Board of Education School Board meeting for Thursday, October 21st, 2021. Please stand for the pledge if you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Janik.
Here.
Ms. Janice Doyle.
Here.
Mr. Kirking. Mr. Lacine.
Here.
Mr. Lucetti.
Here.
Mrs. Stokes.
Here.
Mr. Kostick.
Here. We're going to move on for the first time in about a year and a half. We're excited to welcome back our student council presidents. So who would like to go first?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Madison Jendersack, and I'm presenting on behalf of Lincoln Way Central as Student Council President.
To begin tonight, Lincoln Way Central recently had their homecoming, and it turned to be great for all those involved. Our homecoming Olympics this year were highly participated in, and a lot of the students really enjoyed starting homecoming week with a fun event. It was nice to be able to play games and get competitive since no one was really able to last year. The Spirit Week themes helped to amp the energy, and many students participated in each day's theme. The Student Council also played music during the passing periods every day of the week, and students really enjoyed the songs and the energy they provided. The dance this year was also hosted at CD&Me in order to accommodate for COVID regulations, and it received great feedback all around. The majority of our students loved that it was at a venue instead of being outside. It was wonderful all around, and the students loved that they had the option to sit by one of the fire tables or go and hit the dance floor. Our ticket sales were excellent this year, too. The Student Council at Lincoln Way Central is now preparing to host our Halloween night next Saturday, October 30th from 10 to 1. This is a special event that allows children ages 5 to 10 to safely trick-or-treat around our football stadium with the only fee of donating a canned good. Our clubs and sports around the building will host tables around the track for trick-or-treating, and it's great for all those involved. This also provides a family fun opportunity, especially for our little children with sensory or special needs. We are also preparing for our freshman student elections this year, where students of the freshman class will vote in their officers, such as president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. The ballot will be finalized this week, and our voting will occur next week. Overall, the atmosphere at Lincoln Way Central has been very positive, especially with Halloween coming and everyone being back in school. Most of our students are very excited to be back in person, especially our seniors. Football games have been a lot of fun to attend to, and everyone has been showing their school spirit with dressing up for all of the themes. And despite the remaining restrictions, it is nice to have a sense of normalcy, and most of the students really feel that their learning is improving through in-person teaching. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good night.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Peyton Lamphere, and I'm presenting on behalf of Lincoln Way East as Student Council President. Just over 2 weeks ago, Lincoln Way East students participated in a successful homecoming week. We had numerous teams participate in the homecoming Olympic Games, a dodgeball tournament, a scavenger hunt, and dressing up for Spirit Days. The week ended with the Student Council-sponsored dance, which was held on campus and resulted in 2,200 students dancing under the stars and enjoying food from food trucks. It was an amazing night. October is Make a Difference Month, and Lincoln Way East is finding ways to give back. We are currently running our Pennies for Patients drive to raise money for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. In addition, the Computer Club will be participating in the annual highway cleanup. Finally, Student Council is putting together a roll drive competition where students can bring in paper towel and toilet paper rolls to donate to Frankfurt Food Pantry. October is also Bullying Prevention Month, and in an effort to help everyone know they are valued and special, the PPS department has put together a Take a Compliment campaign. Students are encouraged to take a compliment to give to a friend that is having a rough time, or even give a compliment to a classmate you are not close with. This can be an opportunity to make new friends while also making someone's day better. This week is Salute the Troops night at the Lincoln Way East football game against Bradley Bourbonnais. We are looking forward to a big turnout, especially since our student fan section has done such a great job supporting our team this year. Finally, starting in October, East will have a dress-up theme day on the 22nd of each month to commemorate our graduating seniors. This month is Class of 20 Boo, and students are encouraged to wear their favorite Halloween-themed clothes. Thank you. Have a great night.
Good evening. My name is Emma Stiglick, and I'm the Student Council President at Lincoln Way West. It has been a great start to the year, and it is good to be back. We have a lot of exciting activities already underway at our school. Most recently, we celebrated our homecoming week. At the start of each homecoming week, we have a highly anticipated series of games called Homecoming Olympics. This year, we had 95 teams in attendance with more than 90 staff member volunteers. It was a very successful outdoor event with lots of school spirit and participation. Speaking of school spirit, this year has been one of the best in school history. Not only have we had full student sections at football games, but we've also had outstanding turnouts at volleyball and soccer games. Along with that, our students went all out for our Homecoming Spirit Week. Looking back at my 4 years at West, I can honestly say this year was the most participation I have ever seen. To finish off the week, we had the opportunity to have our first outdoor homecoming at the new Lenox Commons. This year, we had more than 1,800 students in attendance. This is the most in school history. Along with the dancing and music, there were several food trucks in the Commons for students to enjoy as part of the homecoming celebration. On behalf of myself and the students at Lincoln Way West, I would like to thank the Village Hall, Mayor Balderman, and the new Lenox Public Works for helping make this night one to remember. We also have a number of clubs that are up and running. Our National Honor Society is currently holding a toy drive to help at the Pediatric Oncology Treasure Trust Foundation. To help in this effort, we collected toys at our homecoming Class Clash competition. On October 26th, the National Honor Society will induct more than 150 new students into its organization. In addition, our Interact Club is holding a NAWS drive for pet supplies through October 29th. Tonight is the opening night for our fall play, Clue. The show will be at the Lincoln Way West Performing Arts Center tonight through Saturday, starting at 7 p.m. Another piece of exciting news from West is that senior Jenna Davis has been recognized by the Bronx Documentary Center in New York for her award-winning photography. Her photographs were ranked in the top 1% of nearly 230,000 entries. We are looking forward to what the rest of the year has in store. Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to public comment now. I have several people signed up. I just want to remind you that we're limited to 5 minutes per person. Hopefully we'll be able to get to everybody on the list. So we'll get right to it. The first speaker that we have tonight is Elaine and Al Murray.
I'd like to begin by reading a few headlines. USA Today, reading scores drop, math scores low. Will high school seniors be ready for graduation? Education Week, math scores slide to a 20-year low. U.S. News, across the board, scores drop in math and reading for U.S. students. Pew Research, U.S. students' academic achievement still lags that of their peers in many other countries. USA Today, math scores stink in America. Other countries teach it differently and see higher achievement. From being first, USA is now 25th in the world in academic expertise. Not only do these articles list the problems, but they also list solutions. My name is Alan Murray. I've spoken to this board in the past about low proficiency rates at Lincoln Way. As of this morning, proficiency reading for this was still at 59% for reading, math at 55%. Those are failing grades, unacceptable, and needs to be improved. I brought members of our new Lincoln Way Area of Freedom Coalition to help support our continuing concern about academic deficiencies at Lincoln Way, and let you know we are determined to endorse and elect school board members who will initiate programs that improve academic proficiencies at Lincoln Way. We ask that raising proficiency rates at Lincoln Way becomes a priority and put it on the next school board agenda so we are aware of what's being done and your progress. We need board members to not only stand up to Governor Pritzker's unscientific and unproven COVID school mandates, but will also resist Pritzker's bills that have nothing to do with improving academic excellence. For example, Bill 2170, signed by Pritzker, creates a freedom school curriculum that teaches subjects like Nazi Germany compared to the South. I was born in Nazi-occupied France during the Second World War. My childhood experience with the Nazis is before they were forced out of our town by Allied forces. They gathered all the suspects, French freedom fighters, men and women, and shot them down in the square. Then they gathered all the food that was left, piled it up, poured gasoline on it, and burned it. Nothing, I repeat, nothing can compare to Nazi Germany. Another example is Illinois House Bill 818, also signed by Pritzker, that permits teaching kindergarten through high school seniors explicit and graphic sex and calling it sex education. As parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, we are here to say this is not only inappropriate, but totally unacceptable. All we're asking you to do is simply do what you were elected to do and protect our parent rights and raise and maintain our children's academic proficiency rates so that they are better prepared to compete in today's world. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker I have is Gisela Jones. I didn't butcher that too bad.
Hi, I'm Jay Jones. I have a freshman here. I have 2 kids in District 122 and a baby at home. I want to say, nothing is a waste. Not even these years of lies about why we needed to shelter in place, stand 6 feet apart, and send our precious children to school wearing experimental masks without either theirs or our consent as parents. That's what Scripture means when it says God makes all things work to the good of his children, who have been called to participate in his purpose. It's for dark times like these when we've stopped trusting our leaders, when our representatives vote for what they want instead of what their constituents demand, when our hearts are heavy with disappointment in those we trusted with our kids, our cities, and our nation. Even now, as our souls are anxious about what it means for our governor to demand our babies be vaccinated, whether we want that or not, God is using this precarious moment to reveal. Now we see that our boards, commissioners, governor, and president don't care what we think or believe. Now we see which friends can hold our hands through tough times of conscientious disagreement. Now we see the hearts of teachers and principals and administrators, people we've trusted to protect in times past, to protect our kids in times past. Now we see how our leaders are willing to crush us, our children, our businesses, our free will, and steal our voices, all while calling us domestic terrorists and implementing intimidating security tactics. We see what you've really been teaching, and it's not what we see fit for our kids to learn. This shaking is God's mercy. It's an alarm clock that's waking us up in time to take a stand so we can fight against the lies and status quo darkness that is everywhere. I just want to finish by saying this. I see it as a picture that used to be vivid and in color with connections and trust and respect, and the color is being leached out by division and by policies that don't make any sense. And I really would ask you guys to stand up, to stand with us, and to stand against this darkness that's across the land. It's a privilege that I thank God for to have spoken to you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. Ross Johnson.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Ross Johnson. I'm currently a senior in Lincoln Way East. To get straight to the point, the current dress code established within the Lincoln Way district is incredibly sexist, as well as biased against the female students at the District 210 schools. On August 26th in the PE class, which found students outside 96-degree heat, a group of boys decided to play a game in which they needed two teams and decided to play shirts and skins. The boys were, to my knowledge, reprimanded, but even then some remained shirtless. This growing level of bias against female students is unacceptable. The dress code, which calls for no low-cut tops, blouses, dresses, as well as not allowing bare midriffs, halters, or spaghetti straps, clearly imposes a level of propriety that is not imposed on our fellow male students. A young woman who is learning more of herself each day and expressing herself through her apparel should not be impeded on by patriarchal standards. The student handbook reads that concern for the standards of others should prevail in all questions pertaining to dress and appearance. These standards are one-sided, and when put into context within situations regarding female students and their clothing, push the agenda that it is the responsibility of young women to control how their bodies are perceived by male counterparts. The incident on August 26th is just one in a long history of bias against female students, not just at the Lincoln Way schools, but at schools across the U.S. To conclude, it is imperative that the female students at these schools feel that their voices are being heard. Please hear us and understand that the history of objectification and bias behind the dress code is one that should end with us. I'm hopeful that these presentations serve as an introduction to a broader dialogue to include collaborations with student representatives on revising this policy. And now a statement from Senior Travis Ducksworth, who regretfully couldn't be in attendance today. To whom it may concern, as a male student of Lincoln Way, I have seen the disruptiveness of the current dress code firsthand. I can assure you my peers and I have never once been distracted by 2 inches of a girl's abdomen or the bare skin of her shoulders. Speaking on behalf of the male student body, we do not converse or fantasize about it. This leads to the common belief within the student body. The current dress code exists not for the male students, but rather is the product of what the administration decided for the male students. So why punish the girls for that? Yes, some attire is not proper for the school setting, but that has rarely ever been an issue. The young women at East are typically dress coded for less than minor infractions of the handbook, and to their defense, the building reaches uncomfortable temperatures during the summer months. It is as if you expect them to wear jeans and long-sleeve shirts in humid 80-degree weather. I do not see how it is okay for young adult women to be punished by a teacher for wearing an outfit that her parents are okay with her wearing. And sometimes, it's not even what about a girl is wearing. They do not choose the bodies that they are given. Trying to regulate and hide their bodies is a near impossible task that they cannot always control, and the school should not try to control it either. The only time attire becomes a distraction is when deans and teachers point out what a girl is wearing, and the witnesses stare awkwardly in empathy for their classmate. The dress code has a clear prejudice towards the young women of Lincoln Way. As a male, I have no opinion on how to fix this problem, as it is not for me to decide. This letter was written with the intent of showing that it is not just the girls who have noticed the issue. The rules are counterproductive in the way that the method of stopping a distraction is to create one. How is the district maximizing the academic growth for their students if the rules hinder our learning experience? Thank you, Travis Ducksworth and Ross Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Moving on, we have Layla James. What is that? And Cord. Okay.
Hi there, my name is Layla Eames and I'm a senior at Lincoln Way East. I'm extremely involved in our community as I participate in theater and have received straight A's through all 4 years of high school in AP and honors classes.
And I'm Cora Goodwin. I'm also a senior with a large involvement in the school. I'm president and founder of FemPower and I'm varsity athlete, but that doesn't matter as much because the dress code is a universal problem with our student body.
I have pride in our district and am grateful for the opportunities that I've had as a Griffin. But I've been disappointed with the administration's lack of care for the security and comfort in their female-identifying student body. By assuming bare midriffs and collarbones are distracting, it further enforces that it's a female's job to make sure men can control themselves. By pulling female-identifying students out of class, therefore distracting them from their learning environments, our dress code has done the opposite of its intended purpose.
We recently sent out a survey to the student body that was voluntary, but we received over 120 responses of students who took the time out of their day to tell us how and express how the dress code has affected them and their experience at Lincoln Way.
One response read, "Why should a teacher have the right or authority to decide what is deemed as suggestive on a female teenager's body? I then had to take time out of my day to get clothes to cover up when I was only wearing said clothes because it was hot in the building. I also felt singled out because many male students were also wearing tank tops and did not receive the same treatment."
Another response said, "I can't wear appropriate clothing for the weather, but rather have to wear appropriate clothing for males."
And another said, "This is the start of victim-blaming mentality. This is where boys learn not to be responsible for their own actions. This is sexism. This teaches and ingrains children with sexist views, which is extraordinarily dangerous. It's time to reevaluate our dress code and our attitudes at Lincoln Way East." Enough said. The student body has made it very clear that it is time to enact change and to bring attention to the sexist and ill-enforced dress code for the Lincoln Way District.
As a solution to this dilemma, we think it is the best course of action to amend our dress code to be more inclusive to all body types, races, and gender identities. We found an exemplary dress code from Evanston Township High School. The Evanston dress code has many admirable qualities. It's split up into 3 sections describing what students must wear, may wear, and cannot wear. Along with that, they include an entire section dedicated to the enforcement of the dress code, which Lincoln Way's dress code outline is lacking.
The Evanston dress code begins with the basic principle. Certain bodies must be covered for all students at all times. Clothes must be worn in such a way that all private areas are fully covered with opaque fabric. However, cleavage should not have coverage requirements. All items listed within must-wear and may-wear categories below must meet this basic principle.
While the enforcement section on the Lincoln Way dress code just says that students who aren't appropriately dressed will be taken out of class and sent to SSO and sent back to class after agreement has been reached, the Evanston dress code dives much farther into the depth of the enforcement, specifically stating how to enforce the dress code fairly without discrimination against certain genders or races and without publicly shaming students. It says, "No student should be affected by dress code enforcement because of racial identity, sex assigned at birth, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, ethnicity, culture, or religious identity, household income, body size and shape, or body maturity."
The Evanston dress code also says that students should not be shamed or required to display their bodies in front of other students, parents, or staff in school. Shaming includes, but is not limited to, kneeling or bending over to check attire fit, measuring straps or skirt length, asking students to account for their attire in the classroom or in hallways in front of others, calling out students in spaces, in hallways, or in classrooms about perceived dress code violations in front of others, in particular, directing students to correct sagged pants and to not expose the entire undergarment, or confronting students about visible bra straps, since visible waistbands and straps on undergarments are permitted, and accusing students of distracting other students with their clothing.
Evanston's amended dress code received props from the Chicago Tribune, Insider, and many other well-known news outlets for being a revolutionary act and respecting their students, as well as showing commitment to listening to kids and what they need and being open to as many different voices as possible.
We think that it is in all of our best interests to draw inspiration from the Evanston's new dress code and adopt one similar. It is more fair, practical, and more sophisticated in enforcement. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Christian.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian Buma. I am a senior at Lincoln Way East. I am a student at Lincoln Way East. When the gym class incident in August happened, common remarks I heard from guys around me were, "I don't care, the dress code doesn't affect me," or, "Why does it matter? Just follow the dress code and everything will be fine." They're right. The dress code hasn't affected guys. I mean, it has affected women, women of color, gay women, trans women, non-binary students. But it hasn't affected guys, so why should we care? What has been proposed is, for decades long, is a dress code that has been proven in practice to be built upon patriarchal standards that put women below men. It is hard to beget empathy from people who are incapable of it, but that fact is only hardened by the chosen and constant policing of young women's bodies, which is always preceded by the statement, "It is a distraction to other students." Those other students are always male. This code continues to encourage the existence of the male gaze, something that creates more of a dangerous learning environment for girls, and even more so for young women of color, whose mere existence is overshadowed, uncared for, even spoken over in this fight for an equitable world. Regardless of honors distinctions, academic rankings, or metrics, at the end of the day, these women of color, these gay women, trans women, non-binary students, they are still students. They are still people. We can't keep letting boys be boys or keep letting a cycle of cover-ups continue. And we can't keep saying, "I wouldn't want to see my daughter doing this or that." It's not up to us men to design our daughters' lives, to design these students' lives to our liking, or to create standards upon these mirages that simply do not exist. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ross, you already got both yours in, correct? Because you were on here twice? I'm sorry, you signed up twice. I take it you got your...
No. What
Okay.
else we have?
No, it's fine. It's just that it was written twice, and I think because she read the second statement from the
Okay.
other student that couldn't be
Yeah,
here.
that's fine.
I just wanted to make sure that you got everything read. Okay. Thank you. Then our next speaker is Delaney. Oh, you do want to speak again? I'm sorry, yes, please, come on back up. You're on the list twice.
The following is a quote from the National Women's Law Center. While all students disciplined for dress code violations face interruptions, Black girls face unique dress code and hair burdens. For example, some schools ban styles associated with Black girls and women, like hair wraps. Black girls also face adult stereotype perceptions that they are more sexually provocative because of their race, and thus more deserving of punishment for a low-cut shirt or short skirt. Girls who are more physically developed or curvier than their peers may also be viewed as more promiscuous by adults, which can lead them to being punished for more often for tight or revealing clothing. Dress codes also communicate to students that girls are to be blamed for distracting boys instead of teaching boys to respect girls, correct their behavior, and be more responsible. This dangerous message promotes sexual harassment in schools. Freshman year is not an easy year for any student, regardless of who they are. During my freshman year, after laughing and enjoying lunch with friends one day, an administrator came up to me and told me that the red bandana I was wearing on my head was inappropriate. When I brought up the fact that I had seen several of my peers, who all happened to be white, had been wearing bandanas that day, I was told to survey the lunchroom to see if any of the students were disobeying the dress code in the way that I was. No one was. As an inexperienced freshman, I did as I was told, discarded the bandana, revealing the hair that I had tried so desperately to hide that day. I was commended for choosing to be respectful. Looking back, I should have questioned this conversation. Why was I targeted out of the many other white students that were wearing the same thing? Was there an underlying assumption of gang activity on my part? Did this administrator expect me to be disrespectful? As a young Black woman at a predominantly white school, the dress code is something that weighs heavily on me from day to day. To come to school each day and deal with the feeling of constantly being scrutinized is one thing, but I also have to keep in mind the dress code, which in the opinion of several African American students at East, is enforced on young Black women more heavily than my white female peers. This oppressive reality contributes to the daily misogynoir, a type of sexism that only Black women face due to the intersection of race and gender that African American women face.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kemi Amani, and I'm a senior at Lincoln Way East High School as well. For 4 years, I've been proud to call Lincoln Way East my home, and I've been very active in the community. But the issues at our school cannot be ignored. The school's dress code specifically is one that targets Black students. My first experience with the school dress code was as a freshman. I was sitting in class, working on my biology homework, when my teacher asked me if I could raise my hand without my shirt rising. I stayed silent with bated breath because I knew the shirt was on the short side. My teacher forced me to leave the class and go to my locker to find a jacket I could wear over. Never mind that it was winter and the only jacket I had was a giant winter coat. My experience of being called out in front of all my peers was humiliating, and it wouldn't be the last. As I spent more time as a student, I noticed a trend around me. Specific types of students became dress code targets. Black girls who donned bonnets or scarves on their head, Black boys who dared to wear do-rags, Black students who were caught wearing bandanas, all found themselves the subject of write-ups or snide comments, simply because they were considered to be wearing hats, ignoring the fact that Black hair plays a major role in what they were wearing. The politics around Black hair is sensitive, and the need to regulate them is rooted in anti-Blackness, all while their white peers didn't even get so much as a second look. Every school day, Black students are made to feel like they don't belong. If it isn't for the racism they experience in and outside the classroom, our school dress code puts a nail in that coffin by punishing Black students for harmless forms of expression. Our goal at Lincoln Way East is to create a space where students feel included and cared for by administration, and the first step would be creating a dress code that doesn't make students feel like they're outsiders. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Delaney. Greer, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Delaney Grafe. I'm a senior at Lincoln Way East High School, which I am truly privileged to attend. Lincoln Way East has helped guide me on my college journey and helped me see future career options. I've made amazing memories at this school that I will cherish forever, but I do not feel content with leaving Lincoln Way East behind without revising its current dress code. We spend 175 days at the school, which is an average of 1,312 hours for the typical student. So as shown, the typical student spends about 58% of their day at school. These typical students also are not content with the dress code. At least 121 students from a survey my fellow peers conducted, to be exact and more. For example, from this survey from an anonymous student, the first time I was dress coded was on the first day of school, and I felt humiliated being that the teacher felt it was okay to yell at me in the middle of the hallway. And the second day, the teacher brought it up in front of my peers. The common courtesy of pulling me aside was not considered, and my confidence was finished as both outfits made me feel comfortable and happy. Another anonymous student stated, I was told to follow a teacher without any knowledge of why. She then brought me into another teacher's classroom with students already seating to ask if my rips on my jeans went against the dress code. This was unnecessary and disrupted my whole entire school day. This demonstrates our dress code is not effective because we are causing students to have lower self-esteem and critiquing their bodies, which causes one to feel inadequate. This is done simply to appease others and their opinions, which goes against the Lincoln Way harassment policy that states prohibited harassment may include, but is not limited to, oral harassment that is sufficiently severe, persistent, or pervasive. Calling people out for their apparel is extremely pervasive. However, there are many ways we can comment our concerns on students' apparel without embarrassing a student and disrupting their day. For example, we can email the student for them to see said email outside of school hours, which allows for the discussion to be opened up to the student's family, not a dean or teacher. Students should have freedom of expression, not be put into a box to appease others. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Looks like we've got time for one or two more. Alexa Peters?
Hi, my name is Alexa Peters. I'm a senior at Lincoln Way East. I'm here to share a couple personal anecdotes and to close out of the statements of my peers. On the first week of my freshman year, I came into school excited. It had been hot the entire week, racking up into the upper 90s. Like most of the girls and other people, including men, in my grade, I was wearing shorts, the same pair I had already worn twice the same week. For some reason, walking into my 0-hour class, it became an issue. At some point overnight, my shorts became a magnet of distraction for all the young men in my classroom. I was sent straight down to SSO, where I spun around, scrutinized by the administration, who have recently called girls my age hoochie mamas. I didn't pass the fingertip test because the top joint of my middle finger creeped over the edge of my shorts. I sat in the office for 45 minutes, waiting, humiliated, for my mom to drop off a pair of pants. I missed the entire period where we were reviewing for a quiz, and subsequently did not do so well on the quiz the following week. Schools often label the dress code offenders as distractions to other students, particularly female students to male students. That day, like the many other girls who've been victims of the same scrutiny, I lost what was supposed to be an equal learning environment, despite not doing anything to distract or disturb the learning environment. I wasn't sent home because of a complaint. I wasn't sent home because I was labeled a distraction. I was sent before I walked through the door. The real distractions are the rules that police women's bodies, that tell them that they have to subjugate themselves to being measured by fingertips, and the obtrusive gazes of the adults who are there to teach them. I'm asking you today if you would consider a revision of the dress code, not just for me, but all the other students, women, trans women, non-binary students of our school who are adversely affected by it like I have been. I hope you all have a good night. Thank you.
A couple things. First of all, every student, thank you for sharing your thoughts and opinions. We do appreciate that. District 210 Advisory is an advisory of the Board of Education, has representatives, board member. We've got student representatives, parent representatives, teachers, and the 3 principals. One of the items they will be studying this year is the dress code. It is on the agenda. So we do appreciate your input. We are going to look at Evanston. We have different dress code examples that they will look at. They will discuss amongst their body, and then they will bring it back to the board from a recommendation to go forward. But thank you for your input and sharing your perspective on that. As I said, that is something that is on the agenda. The first meeting was last month. The next meeting will be in November, and they meet once a month throughout the school year, and that is definitely a topic that is going to be studied.
All right, we've got time for one more speaker, which would put us at 30 minutes. So, Connor Martle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Connor Morrell, and I'm a student at Lincoln Way East. I'm a senior, and I would like to apologize beforehand. I do have a speech impediment. I cannot pronounce my O's, so I sound British. Sometimes I've got that a lot. So I'm used to it, but I also do have a stutter. So if things don't come out right, I'm not like trying to be mean or anything. I'm not too nervous, but it's my speech impediment. And I would like to start off with when you revise the dress code, it actually could do something in a legal sense. And that is, it could make it harder for an accusation to be brushed away. If there's a dress code, the lawyer of a defendant could say they were not following dress code and therefore are at fault. And while, to my knowledge, this has not happened at any of the Lincoln Ways or any of the feeder schools, has happened once in Texas. It happened in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then it happened recently in 2018 in Lee, Massachusetts. But if you revise the dress code, you could easily take this give me a second. Sorry. Thank you. You could easily take this excuse away, and since the excuse of they were dressing inappropriately and it made my client, feel weird or possibly horny is not an excuse in a court of law, we could really get some people who have done some bad things to some nice students behind bars or get punishment in some way, shape, or form. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm not an AP student. I'm not a scholar. I'm not gonna be the next philosopher. I'm not gonna be, going to Mars anytime soon. But you don't have to be the smartest person alive to know what the right thing is to do. And I was always raised on a moral basis that I should do things that are morally correct, not objectively correct. And I truly do think that for all students, male, female, non-binary, transgender, that the dress code does need to be revised. And even if it's a little teeny bit, that every single little teeny bit helps the cause. Thank you for your time.
For 30 minutes, and I just want to congratulate all you students who did come out tonight. We're very impressed, and you're all very articulate, well-spoken, and well thought out, and we are listening. So thank you for coming out. We appreciate you. And with that, we are going to move on to some presentations. The review of the completed fiscal year 22 capital improvement projects, which were completed this past in the summer of 21.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. I'll just take a few minutes and go over some of the projects that we completed over this past summer. All the projects are substantially complete with just a few punch list items still outstanding. First off, at Lincoln Way Central, we have that concession stand / maintenance building out at the stadium. The bathrooms were in disrepair. The concession stand was in disrepair. The roof was coming apart, so it was well overdue for renovation. There's some pictures from the before conditions, and we've remodeled it. The bathrooms are completely renewed. Concession stand is renewed. We've now made the access to the restrooms ADA compliant and replaced the roofing, doors, windows, new rolling shutters for the concession stand. That was a huge improvement there. East, Lincoln Way East, the Performance Center, the weight room was small, dark, cramped. It was difficult for them to get done what they needed to do there. So we expanded that by removing the wall to the fitness center and giving them more room, brighter environment, a little strip of turf there to do some sled work. Another well-needed, long overdue project. Central Wood Shop is really a maintenance item, but that sawdust collector has been here forever. You see it's held together with clamps, and it didn't work very well, so now we've replaced that. That turned out very nice for them. We installed paths and concrete pads at Lincoln Way West around all the baseball and softball fields. Out of the 3 sites, West was in the worst shape. I know some that come to Central quite a bit would argue that, but there were limestone paths in place that eroded anytime it rained, made it very difficult for anybody to get to the various fields. So that's a good improvement there. We replaced the stadium turf at Lincoln Way West and resurfaced the track. I want to personally thank the school board for approving that. I have a couple of boys that play football there. So it's a nice, very nice field. At Lincoln Way East, again, outbuilding renovations. These were primarily exterior renovations to the 2 concession stands at the stadium with a small addition on the south concession stand for a ticket booth. The jury's still out on the color choice of the architects, but the work itself is a great improvement. We have 50-year standing seam roofs on those buildings now, cement board siding, high-quality doors, and rolling overhead doors. And then Lincoln Way Central stormwater improvements. We changed the elevation and added a drain to the north drive to divert water away from the basement. For years, we've had a problem with flooding in that basement, and we've tested that out over the past couple weeks with heavy rainfalls, and it was successful, so we're very happy about that. We also did some roof work. I don't have pictures of the roof, and we finished the fire doors, but those are all the projects that we completed over the summer. Thank you again for your support in getting those done.
Could we go take a tour of the roof?
We could. We could.
Moving on to the 5-year forecast.
Thank you. Give me just a second. I'll connect here. Mm-hmm. While I am connecting, I will say that Brad and I continue to work in tandem very, very well, and a lot of what's gone into tonight's forecast is many thanks to Brad for his collaboration. So I'm the one speaking tonight, but it's been value added for sure. All right, so good evening, and tonight I've got the chance to share the latest 5-year financial forecast for Lincoln Way 210. As you know, we use an interactive tool to shape conversations about present day and future financial matters of the district. During this work, we need to make many assumptions about how we receive and spend money each year. Assumptions are simply the questions we ask and the answers that we come to that help us make predictions about the future. And so for the board and for anyone else listening, for example, as new homes are built, we should obviously predict an increase in what we would be receiving in property taxes. However, with new homes, often come new families. So how does that impact our future enrollment? And how many teachers will we need to hire to teach those students? So we have to ask these and other questions, and we need to make assumptions based on the information that we have at the time. In District 210, we present forecasts once in the fall after the annual budget has been adopted by the board, and once in the spring as we prepare for the next hiring and budget seasons. These points in time give us an opportunity to reflect and evaluate whether we should solidify our plans or whether we need to make adjustments in order to meet our goals. The purpose of my presentation here this evening is to walk through some of these assumptions and to see how they impact our financial outlook. So we'll start with some high-level revenue assumptions here tonight. Local property taxes, as you know, represent about 75% of all the money that the district receives each year. Each year's amount is provided to us by the county, and it's based on a few key variables that we need to predict in future years so that we can project what revenue we think we'll receive. And first I'd like to highlight is inflation. For example, if inflation is 2%, as it has been the last several years, hypothetically, then we are automatically given a 2% increase in our tax revenue in the upcoming year. Then anything over that amount comes from the construction of new property in the district, as you know. Through the end of September, 2021, however, has experienced higher than average inflation. The Consumer Price Index from January through September is 4.8%. Now, the end of the calendar year is typically flat or slightly negative. I did a 10-year look back, and I'll tell you that September through December typically sees a drop of anywhere from 1/4 to 0.5%. But that being said, there's no way to know whether this will actually play out similarly this year or not. So to be safe, we feel a 4% estimate is mildly conservative, but reasonable at this point for our assumptions. I do not anticipate inflation to return to 2% right away. And this, again, might be conservative in the out years, but that 2.3% figure is a 5-year average inclusive of 2021. As for new construction, last month, Will County issued preliminary estimates of $72 million for 2021. That is higher than the 55 to 60 million that we've been averaging the last several years. And again, even if that does slow down in the housing market, we don't think it'll come back to 60 million right away. So with these assumptions in place, we predict an average increase of just over 3.5% each year in local property tax money received. A great deal of analysis is completed behind the scenes. Tonight, I'm going to focus on the high level. I'm not going to get overly granular, but I do want you to know what goes into the work as we prepare budgets, tax levies, forecasts, and more. This, for example, is a historical look back, and a lot of our work in projecting the future has to do with what's happened in the past. And so this is the work behind the scenes on property values, new construction, inflation, et cetera, that go into that. And again, this work is behind the scenes on all of the assumptions at play here tonight. The next largest source of revenue comes from the state. A few years ago, the state implemented a new formula to determine how it should allocate money to school districts most fairly across Illinois. Lincoln Way was categorized as a Tier 1, which is the lowest category out of 4. The state gives the most money to those districts who demonstrate the highest need. Now, there is a hold harmless in place, meaning once we kind of level up in the allocation we're getting from the state, and once we receive that bump, we will stay at least at that level in future years. So the hold harmless is true. Now, we have built increases into our forecast. We receive about $8 million each year from the state right now. But we did make future projections more modest, as we think we'll level up and kind of move into that second tier. For other sources of revenue, annual increases are assumed. Now, these might not come to fruition exactly as predicted, and COVID has not helped our ability to kind of predict where things will play out in terms of the supply chain, but our assumptions are based on current knowledge and historical trends. Quickly, a few high-level expense assumptions. Salary and benefits, as you know, comprise a majority of what we spend each year, and so the assumptions we make in this area are very impactful. Many projected figures are based on collective bargaining agreements and other contracts we have in place, but that's not sufficient in isolation. We need to make assumptions about program changes, staffing level changes. For example, the example I gave earlier about new homes, if enrollment goes up and we have section increases, any new staff positions obviously carry salary and benefits costs with them, and we incorporate them into these models. Each time we present an updated forecast, we reevaluate those considerations and as well as others, retirements, attrition, et cetera. Those are factored in. So our overall increase in salary and benefits as it currently stands is projected just over 3.5% over the next 5 years.
Our revenue and our expenditures, the salaries are the exact same?
They, and purely coincidentally, yes. Now operating, I will say. So debt service, another significant area for us in expenses is the repayment of bonds, and the district's current schedule for debt repayment is factored into the financial forecast as we stand here now. District administration's met with Mr. Bob Lewis from PMA. I know you've heard from him in the past. We met with him last month. And he will be presenting a restructuring scenario to level off that annual debt burden at next month's board meeting in November. We have not incorporated any alternative debt scenarios into this forecast at this time because we do not feel that's appropriate until that's been reviewed by the board. So I want to be clear about that. We will refine this portion of the 5-year model as appropriate before the spring forecast update. Estimates for capital improvements have been factored into this model. You heard from Mr. Wilkie earlier, and he'll talk about the upcoming summer's projects later tonight. We've reviewed our need-to-do list, and we outlined what we believe are appropriate budgets for the next 5 years. Now, the pre-funding model that the board has put into place does maintain flexibility from a budget standpoint. And so as we shift away, and I know, Mr. Lucetti, you brought this up last month in the meeting, but as we shift away from a line item contingency budget that was put in place during COVID, that is not factored into the future years. A line item contingency is not factored in at this time. But pre-funding can act as a relief valve for our future financial picture if it were to change. So we can base the annual amount that the board approves to pre-fund each year on our capital needs at the time, on our fund balances at the time, and based on the goals of the board and the wishes of the board. As you can see on this line graph, projected operating fund balances at the end of each year continue to increase. Our operating fund balance at the close of fiscal year 27 is projected to be $39.5 million based on the assumptions built into this model. You might notice the bar graphs at the bottom, I did want to point out, contain certain operating funds are projected to grow or shrink in future years. This is simply based on how we've divvied up proportionally the tax levy at this time, the way we have it now for cash flow needs. So as you can see, the education fund is growing and transportation is shrinking. We would, of course, make adjustments 2 years from now, 3 years from now on how we proportion the tax levy dollars to ensure we have balances, but that will depend on cash flow needs at the time. These are the revenue and expenditure data feeding that graph that we just saw. I know it's small on the screen, but hopefully you have it and can zoom in as well. Here you can see a 3% surplus projected for fiscal year 23. That is per the board's current fund balance policy. So we are projected to hit the fund balance goal of 33% next year. In future years, we want to ensure enough of a surplus to maintain our fund balances, but we can slowly grow how much we allocate to other needs across the district, such as the capital improvements that Rich mentioned earlier. Our operating fund balance is projected to be 35% at the end of fiscal year 27 in this scenario. The next two slides are not just the operating funds, but they include all funds, and so that includes both debt service and Fund 60 capital improvements. Our reserves in the debt service fund do change according to the debt schedule and the payment requirements. So again, when Mr. Lewis discusses any restructuring, if the board does decide to pursue a different path, if or when that occurs, we would of course update those projections accordingly the next time that we forecast. For now, our most timely needs are to move ahead with the summer of 2022 capital projects, and in addition, our business office team will be updating multi-year department needs with district administrators in each area. As we refine our assumptions and needs in the coming years, we will use this tool to provide another snapshot later this school year ahead of the 22-23 year. So I welcome any questions or comments that you have at this time, and thank you very much.
Quick question for the federal funding. You have it decreasing by 31% next year, and then not decreasing all the following year, and then decreasing another 12% the following year. How did you come up with those?
It's due to ESSER 2 and ESSER 3.
Okay.
So that's your federal CARES grant, and we have both ESSER 2 and 3 monies budgeted this year. ESSER 2 has to be spent this year, so that's the percentage drop off after this year. And then ESSER 3 is spread across each of the next 3 fiscal years. We have some flexibility with how we allocate those monies. And so the way that we've at least forecasted budgeting them, and we do have some movement there, but then you would see another percentage drop after that because those monies expire. Good question.
Okay. Hey, Brad, you direct this to Brad, but when you first developed the model, I think a dimension that we probably need to start to add to this is enrollment, because the factor of growth keeps coming. I wrote down, he said it at least 4 times, that if growth is coming, but we don't see it coming in enrollment, so if the tax revenue base continues to grow, but there's not more students, that adds a dynamic to this model that probably needs to be feathered in here. Or if the converse happens, if growth comes and there's going to be more students, that factor probably should be feathered in here somewhere. Because we've been fairly benign on our student population, and we haven't seen anything significant in any of the feeder schools, at least the last few presentations we've seen. But if the tax base continues to grow, because the construction numbers are up, if inflation holds to the extent that you're predicting it will, that means there'll be more revenues.
Sure.
then it's gonna, at some point, lead me to the board member that I'd like to see leave the board, and his name's Max Levy. And, is that funny? But seriously, there'll come a point where I think unless we show that as another dimension in this forecast, it would say, hey, we're just gonna keep taking revenues, we're serving the same number of population, and where's that money going?
No, I think it's a really good point. And you're right, and that comes with collaboration between us and the feeders, and it also comes with collaboration. Some of the things I've done in the past, and I'm sure Dr. Tingley and others, and perhaps some of you on this board, is making sure we're communicating with the builders, with the municipalities, who's moving and where, finding as much information as we can. It will never be perfect. There will always be turnover. You can't project everything perfectly. But I've seen two things go awry when you don't kind of have your eyes at least on that as best you can. And one, if we assume we have the extra revenue, and then we start spending that, and the kids don't come, why are we spending that, right? On the flip side, if you see the revenue go up, but you know young families are moving in, you know that you will have them. And that's the future planning that we're talking about, right? You might not see and I know that's the point you're trying to make, right? Is that that's a layer here where we can't assume that they will never come. We also may not be assuming they're coming tomorrow. We have to have that multi-year look forward. I agree with you, and that's where the collaboration, whether it's myself and other business managers or whoever's doing the demographic studies, to make sure that we have that information best we can.
Correct. And the dynamics of the area are changing a little bit as well. Used to be purely a household-related corridor.
Sure.
And now as logistics and other things are being built out, those things are gonna start to feather in.
Sure.
And the commercial base, which is something that
Yep.
would benefit a school district relying on real estate taxes,
Yeah.
is gonna be a new dynamic for this district.
I
So
agree,
that's
I
why
agree with that comment, yeah.
I'm imploring you to start to add that dimension in there, because there will come a point, and we still may continue to max levy, but then words like defeasance of debt and other
Abatement,
things may come
yeah.
into play here.
Abatement, yeah.
Yeah, so, or even an abatement of it to go that route. So that's where there's gotta be that other axis that's gotta cross into this at some point.
That's a good point, and a good point. You're right, Joe, we're seeing our commercial, the percentage of commercial now is up higher than it has been in the past in terms of the total revenue, commercial as opposed to family homes. So that is a good point. November, we'll have our feeder enrollments and bring those. That's one of the great things about being a high school is we've got pretty accurate numbers. Our numbers have been spot on since we've been doing this now for 7 years of actually we said the butts in the seats. And so we know exactly how many seventh graders, how many third graders, how many second graders. And so we'll bring that back to the board in November, but I do know that's something we can build into this model. It's a good point.
One more quick one. You said earlier back when you were going through the slides, the average annual increase, you guys are figuring about 3.52%. Is that, and if you said it, I apologize, I missed it, but are we strictly talking about the property tax increase, or is this all 100% of our revenue?
That slide, that example was property taxes,
That's just property taxes.
correct?
Thank you. That was my only question.
Yeah, well, it's operating taxes.
That's right, okay.
Is that what you're getting at? I'm
Well,
sorry,
no,
that's
so the local property taxes in that slide, you said the annual, then it says, because it was revenue changes, but that 3.52%, is that you're speaking just to property taxes, or is that overall revenue?
I am speaking just to property taxes and specifically to operating.
Gotcha.
And that's why, yes, no, it's a fair point, because the debt schedule's separated, and it's obviously on its own schedule in terms of how we tax our constituents based on the payment schedule and the bond repayment. So that's separate. This is where I'm talking about what's driven by inflation and new construction.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, that's all.
Yep.
So
Great question.
I mean, what we're running into here is, when you say we're at 4.8 on CPI, pretty good chance, in my opinion, I know we're being conservative up there and saying 4%, but
sure,
pretty much we could max out at 5 very easily. And then on top of that, so that's just the operating piece of it. you also have this bump up that we're dealing with on the debt side of things. So you're looking at a pretty, again, I know the levy years are a little bit further out, 2 years, what is it, 2 years?
Yeah, by the time that we see
Right.
that.
By
That,
the
for
time-
example, this next tax bill is going to be based on 1.4%, not on anything for. So you're correct.
Right. But you're going to start seeing some fairly large increases. And it's not only going to be, I mean, we're just one municipality taxing. It's going to be a pretty big, I think, shock for a lot of homeowners, their tax bills, as you start looking out. Because we've had 7 to 10 years where, 2% has been about the high for what's happened with inflation and CPI. And now you're coming in at, 5, potentially at the cap. So, I mean, from my perspective, I do think that this discussion with Bob Lewis and what we've been talking about, at least in that little bump we were talking about, is, something that we should focus on. Were we going to talk about, like, the little slideshow we had? The emailed to us?
Oh, it was emailed with the different scenarios?
Yes.
We weren't gonna do that tonight.
Okay.
If you have questions on that, we can certainly discuss that. We're gonna have, I think after we meet with Bob, is the time we'll rework this. After we meet with Bob, I think we'll rework some of this. Because to your point, Chris, if we're able to take 2.5 or 3 million and put it towards the bond structure, then that at least allows the board to see what we're talking about in terms of those increases. I think that we have to have discussions prior, probably 2 board meetings prior to the tax levy, to determine what the board's looking at in terms of a percentage. Also to give scenarios on, okay, if we do max levy, but then we have, then our potential, surplus at the end of the year is 6 million, maybe instead of all going to property taxes, we say, okay, 2.5 million of that, we're gonna abate taxes for the following year. I mean, there's gonna be different scenarios to look at. The discussion of max levy, or the discussion of abating taxes, or the discussion of putting it towards long-term debt. Those will all be things that the board can discuss and look at. So there will be options.
And part of this is, it would be great, in some aspects, it's really nice for this forecast to set the stage for a framing of discussion with Bob Lewis and debt restructuring. On the other hand, it's great to hear from Bob first, see what the options are in debt restructuring, and then see how that impacts the forecast. So it's a little chicken or the egg, but where Bob will go through, obviously with our financial outlook improving, and I don't want to get ahead of us for November's meeting, but we're excited about the fact that we have more stability. We have seen our rating go up over time, and Bob is pleased with where he thinks we will land in terms of the options. And so I'll let him speak to that more next month, and then we'll update the forecast accordingly. Thank you all so much.
Moving on to the consent agenda, which includes approval of the regular meeting minutes from September 16th, 2021, approval of the closed meeting minutes from September 16th, 2021, approval of the payrolls from September 20th, October 5th, and October 20th, 2021, personnel reports, approval of District 210 advisory minutes from March 8th, approval of District 210 advisory meeting schedule for the 21-22 school year, out-of-state travel. Would anybody like anything pulled from the consent agenda for discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to our action items. Presentation of invoices for September 17th, 2021 through October 21st, 2021.
Motion to approve the invoices in the amount of $2,754,862.40, dated October 21st, 2021.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to the treasurer's report for September.
Thank you. You may notice this month's cover memo is organized a little bit differently, and so any feedback you wish to share is welcome. The monthly financials report is presented tonight in 5 sections. So first, we have a summary of the previous month's revenues and expenses. We received $14.1 million in revenue in the month of September, and expenses were $8.4 million. Our total balances at the end of September were $37.7 million. Second in this report is a year-to-date budget analysis. You'll see a link for the detail that you're accustomed to seeing each month, as well as a second link for a new dashboard that we've created. And I do want to thank Brad for his time and effort as he's created these very nice-looking gauges that you see there. These visuals provide a quick and easy way to assess our financial picture through the end of September. Expenditure trends are on pace with last year. On paper, our revenues appear to be trending behind, but this is primarily due to a change in the Will County tax distribution timeline, as I mentioned at last month's board meeting. When I present the October financials next month, we'll be right back on track. The third section is the investment report, and again, the link you see here provides the same information that you've received in prior months. We do remain limited on what we can invest at this time, given our own debt repayment timeline and what our needs are from a cash flow standpoint in January, coupled with extremely low interest rates at this time. So we continue working with PMA to explore all of the options. Fourth is the cash flow report. Now, obviously, as you know, our financial stability continues to improve. We are no longer in a position where we need to issue tax anticipation warrants. But that being said, we do continue to evaluate our cash flow needs by fund. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that in this year's budget, we have an interfund loan this year to ensure those balances are appropriate. Through the end of September, the district has had a positive cash variance of just over $700,000. The overall net cash balance through September 30th is approximately $16 million lower than at the same point last year, but again, that's due to the county's tax distribution dates. If you want to take a look at the cash flow detail linked in this section, we did update in this section of the report. The cash flow has been updated for the October 7th tax distribution. So the numbers that you see there listed on October 7th in the detail, we did receive those. And so the fifth and final section of the report is titled Looking Ahead, and that serves just to give an early heads up of any noteworthy items that will be presented next month, and that October 7th tax distribution is the one. So I will simply note the $20+ million in revenues we received. The October 31st monthly financial summary will see us back on par with the prior year, and I anticipate our cash balances through the end of October will be about $55 million. I welcome any questions or feedback.
A couple just small ones. With the county and the distribution of the real estate taxes, have they given any indication that there's been any reduction in collection rates?
No, and it's not that I'm aware of. No.
No is a good answer.
Yeah, no, not that I'm aware of. And it is a little difficult to tell just because we're also, at the beginning of this fiscal year, we're playing catch up with that $5 million spillover from last fiscal year that we got later. But in terms of the overall calendar year collection rate, no, not that I've heard.
Okay, just if
it's a fair question, yeah.
If you could maybe just reach out to the treasurer and just see if there's been any decline in collection rates. Just that's one of the things we've always been, I use the religious term, but blessed with the fact that we levy $1, we get $1. But
Yep.
not all taxing districts have that, and I've been seeing that in other districts, so.
I experienced a decline in my former organization, I agree. So yes, I'd be happy to reach out.
And
Yes,
this
sir.
would be the COVID wave of escrows that might have gotten hit, so
Mhm.
just putting it out there.
Yep.
And then have they given any indication, are they planning on carrying forward this 4 installment thing into the next year?
I have not heard that to be the case, but when I talk to the treasurer, I can certainly ask those questions. Yep.
I've heard no, Joe.
Okay.
So, I've heard that that's not gonna be
Okay,
back.
good. All right.
And
Not
our
many
cash
people
flow for-
used it because, I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Because like I said, around 50-60% of people escrow their taxes with their mortgage. And the mortgage companies just paid them on June 1st. And mostly the folks that use the 4 installments for people that paid their own. And a lot of people didn't want to buy that anyway, so I'm heard that's not coming back. We'll see.
Our cash flow projections and any other things that we're predicting out, financially speaking, are assuming a return to normalcy, not assuming 4. But I would be happy to verify it.
Anything else on the treasurer's report? With that, I'm looking for a motion to pass the treasurer's report, or to accept the treasurer's report for September 2021 as presented. A motion and a second. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on, student activities for September 2021. Student activities for the month of September, fund balance $2,320,461, revenue of $431,900, and expenditures of $342,532. No accounts in the negative as of September 30th, so that's a positive.
Wow, that doesn't happen all that often.
No, it doesn't. All the fundraising was completed. Well, we start winter sports next month, so it'll be right back down. Thank you. Any question or discussion on student activities? With that, I entertain a motion to accept the student activities report for September 2021 as presented. Did I get a second after Beth's ringing endorsement? Thank you. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
All right, moving on to the music equipment bid. I'm sorry, I thought you called it, Linda.
The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
I just knew Beth was so enthusiastic about it, there was no way that it wasn't going to pass. All right, now moving on to the music equipment bid.
Each year, our district's music department chairs review current inventories of instruments, cases, speakers, etc. I do want to thank Justin Barnish, Bert Johnson, and Stacy Jackson. They were really pivotal. As you can imagine, bid specifications for very specific musical instruments and evaluating those bid results. It was nice to collaborate with them from the business office standpoint. On October 8th, we opened bids from 4 vendors, as you see listed here in the cover memo. We did write these bid specifications intentionally to allow for a mixed award based on item-by-item pricing, and that is typical in this type of bid. So based on these results, we are requesting board approval of $50,165.19 in purchases. The items for each vendor are highlighted on the bid tabulation sheet.
Any discussion or questions?
Have we worked with all these vendors before?
Yes.
With that, I entertain a motion to accept the music equipment bid as presented. A motion and a second. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to fiscal year '23 capital improvement projects to take place this coming summer of '22. In your backup materials is an overview of capital projects that we would like to go to bid. Once the design and bid is completed, the bidding is completed, it would come back to the board for approval as we've done in the past. So this is an additional step that we added, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. It's been a while now, that we bring the list to the board just to say, okay, this is what we're going to go bid on, and then gives us more time to say, okay, here's the cost, here's how that fit. Of this, there's $3.4 million in the capital improvement budget. There's $500,000 in the site improvement budget, and then we have a $50,000 maintenance grant. So we would ask the board for approval to move forward on the engineering and bidding, and then depending upon how those prices come back, we would come back to the board at another date to get a green light to move forward. That also gives us time to see how we're going to work with some of our long-term debt, and then also how these would fit into that forecast. Any questions for Rich or Mike or Brad or myself?
Scott, just real quick, how are these prioritized?
So the list this year is primarily need-based, and it's working through our audit that we had our engineers do. So we go through and where are we on our roofs, where are we on our parking lots, and those items that were in there. And then the rest is collaboration with our building teams and district administration. Like you see on here, the foods room at Central, we either have to do some work or we're gonna have to travel the students to east or west for foods. It's to that point. You know, that room is well over 20 years old. So that's how that would fit in. As you can see, there's a lot of building envelope in there this year in mechanical and engineering, and that's coming directly from, you know, from our life safety and from our 15-year plan that our architects had put together for us. You know, we use the term fund projects. The majority of these projects are projects that are necessary for us to continue to operate. You know, they're the site improvements. So let's see if we break them down in the third list. So you can see there's a lot of chillers and carpet, you know, tile, asbestos removal. The gym floors have been on our schedule now for, I think, 2 years, Rich, and we haven't been able to get them done yet. And so, as I said, the majority of these are directly from our architects, but then there's a couple that buildings brought forward. The large ticket item at East is the ceiling of the field house has begun to peel. So that will need a sandblast and painting. At the same time, we hope to get the roof done, so that should be a 20-year fix. The field house here is not peeling, and it was same product, correct, Rich?
Correct.
So we don't understand. Obviously, it's well out of warranty, but that's a must right now because you've got large flakes falling throughout the day. So that's the large ticket item at East this year.
If nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to pass the fiscal year 2023 capital improvement project structure as presented.
So moved.
Motion to second. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to board goals for the 21-22 school year.
Included in your backup materials is our proposed board goals for the upcoming year. You can see the report out to date for the goals as you move throughout the document. Be happy to answer any questions, make any additions, subtractions that board members may have. There have been some minor adjustments to all areas, but primarily we've stayed with the same format that we've used and just made adjustments over time. Be happy to answer any questions or any thoughts that you may have. Pardon me? No, nothing, no, we just, pretty straightforward.
If there's no discussion, I'd entertain a motion to pass the board goals for the 21-22 school year as presented. Motion is second. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to the appointment of new members to the District 210 Advisory Committee.
Also included in your backup material is a list of the members for the upcoming school year. We would ask the board to approve those. They had their first meeting, but no action. They'll get rolling here in November. And so we would ask you to approve these appointments as presented. Any discussion?
I know we have a to be announced for East. Are we just approving it and then Mr. Griggs will just appoint who he wants? That's.
If you recall, in our contract negotiations the last time, there has to be an agreement on the individual, and so we're working on that process right now.
I did not recall that, but thank you for reminding me.
Yes, so one of the changes to our contract is the superintendent and union president must agree on the appointee. So we are discussing at this time, and there will be somebody at the November meeting. They won't be a voting member until the December meeting.
Beth, you want to keep going, huh? Awesome.
It's just a, or Scott, maybe, or Beth, or whomever, it's a 4 parents and 2 students. Is it like always the way it's been?
For each building?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
Correct. So we've always, in the bylaws, it's a junior and a senior from each building, and then 2 parents from each junior
Class.
high. So there would be, like for West, there'd be 2 Manhattan parents,
Okay.
and then 2 Liberty parents.
Oh, okay.
So we have equal representation, yeah.
Just with the student voice today and the one
They
topic.
can come and speak, they're just not voting,
Got it.
so
Yeah.
that's.
But that's a good question. There's public comment, and they can be part of the meeting, yes.
The Mondays before the board meetings.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion to the appointment, to approve the appointment of the new members of the District 210 Advisory Committee as presented.
I move.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, and a third. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to informational items. Report of Lincoln Way Special Education District 843 Governing Board meeting held on September 28th.
So after coming back, they've pretty much transitioned pretty well, other than, managing bus drivers. But I think they've been managing that because, of course, they're trying to make their routes as short as possible, with their population. But nothing eventful.
Any questions for Deidre? If not, moving on, FOIA requests.
FOIA requests are listed in your backup material. I think there were 3 this past month.
Not bad. All right. Building and grounds.
Also included, if you have any questions for Mr. Wilkie, he'll be happy to answer them, either this evening or via email.
Community relations report.
Also included in your backup material, a little bit new format, but it's also there for your review. We have asset of the month.
Asset of the month.
Okay. Asset of the month for October, social awareness. A young person knows how to plan ahead and make choices, talk to your children through choices, use what if. I also like the last one. I'm not very good at this, but allow for mistakes, don't blow up at a poor choice, and don't rescue your child from the consequences. I don't rescue, I need to work on the blowing up. And then at school, include student leaders on decision-making committees on boards, and I think we've done that, and I know our principals are doing a good job of bringing in students as well. In the community, permit young people to participate in decisions about community programs and special projects.
Thank you. 210 Advisory.
The two topics that we'll be covering this year are obviously the dress code and, this is really weird, it's like loud. And then we'll also be looking at the grading for the semester. So the 80-20, we're gonna re-examine final exams, policies, and things like that.
Excellent. Fiscal year 2023 budget calendar.
We are obviously still early in 21-22, but we've already begun planning stages, and the forecast was that first launch point tonight for next fiscal year. The purpose is to serve as a guideline, so just like the forecast, I do want to highlight some aspects may evolve in future months and some dates may change.
Thank you. Any legislative report?
Nothing to report, but we need to hold on to our hats because it is the veto session, so there will be legislation in the next 2 weeks. And as I get updates, I'll share those with the board.
Superintendent's district report.
We've completed our AFR. Our accountant, managing partner, will be here next month to share those results. It'll be a clean audit once again. And most important is our financial profile score will now be moved to recognition. So as we all know, 5-6 years ago, we were on the watch list, and then we crept up to early warning and review, and now recognition. And that's a significant accomplishment. And obviously, everybody deserves credit for that. You know, the timing of it over 5 years, once I got this word, I sat down to think about it. And as we go back and we review some of the board meetings we had in the auditorium, when some of you members were first with us, and how we've done it, you know, collectively done a really good job. So I appreciate the help and the guidance of the board throughout this time. You know, I sent Steve Langert an email and a text message to say thank you, and he said, I knew you'd get there faster than I thought. But, you know, the different individuals that helped us along the way, I've sent some notes out to the Don Webbers, and so I just wanted to say thank you to this board, previous board members, Brad stepping in during a difficult time. You know, you look at the detail of where we are now compared to where we were, not only managing the budget, but forecasting and looking ahead. You know, it's been a group effort, so I thank everyone involved, and we should all be proud of that accomplishment. And now we need to maintain and continue to move forward. But we're in a good place financially, and we have perspective going forward. It's very important that we never lose that perspective. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Any other district business?
No other district business to report.
All right, correspondence.
There is a statement from the Illinois School Board Association that sent to the National School Board Association for the board members' review. I've just attached it in your backup materials.
Okay. If there is nothing else, I would entertain a motion to move into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employees, establish the sale or lease price of real estate, student disciplinary cases, and other student-related matters. A motion and a second. Lynn, if you'd open the vote, please.
I'm sorry. The vote is open. No, it's not. Yes, it is. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you, and there might be some action after.
There will not be any.
Oh, no, nothing. Okay, there'll be no action after closed session this evening.